Shiny sails blow high, storms can't make us cry. Through gales we drag anchor wide, Great Lakes our endless tide. Exploring islands near and far, Rock Isle under a northern
Welcome to
star.
Saltless Shakedowns. I'm your host, and today we're going to have a story time. But remember, Saltless Shakedowns is the only channel with its own sea shanty. Watch it here, learn the words, sing along. So we're talking about Rock Island today, and I visited this island with my family, and it is a fascinating island. I mean, it has every element for a good story. You have the Chicago millionaire that purchases the island, and then he builds these overly constructed buildings that are just totally beautiful and fills them with Nordic Viking style furniture and strange writing over the fireplace and trinkets and stories. And then you can hike the Thordarson Loop Trail. And when you start that hike on the trail, the first thing you see is this strange wooden gate. And this structure is spanning the trail, but it's odd because from the top of the gate, there's a chain. And from that chain, there's a wooden basket that is suspended in the top. And it's like, that looks pretty bizarre. And don't truly understand what the purpose of that gate is. But you can continue on and you can go to the Potawatomi Lighthouse, explore the lighthouse. That's very interesting. And as you move along even further, there's the beachside campgrounds. And those are really cool. The best campsites I've ever seen. That's right off the beach. And each fire pit has a stone construction pyramid on it that looks like it would be a wonderful windbreak. But it also sort of looks like it's an altar. Now, that combined with the strange lore around the island, if you don't know what cryptids are, they're things that, people think they see and whatever, but this island's got many of them. I mean, all of Wisconsin's got like a total of 8, but when you read through the cryptid list, they're just weird. There's like nothing you've ever heard about. So that is fascinating. But this island is very interesting for its history. And if you want to learn more about the history of Rock Island, I recommend the channel Restless Viking. Him and his wife Poppins do a really good job breaking down the history from the beginning to modern day. So check out their channel right here. Now, what I discovered is I was scrolling through Reddit, and under the subreddit Ghosts, I discovered this post about a guy's experience on Rock Island, and it was a great story. So that's the story you get to hear today. But if you want to see the original story, you can search on Reddit and read about it here, or you can even go to the guy's YouTube channel. His name is Scary Third Eye. He did a video on it on that YouTube channel. But right now, pop some popcorn, dim the lights. It's story time. In the summer of 2021, Alex made his first and his last trip to Rock Island. After 2 ferry rides, he arrived at the dock about 2 p.m. He had reserved Campsite E in the backpacker campground about a mile away from the dock. The hike wasn't terribly long, but he threw on his pack and he took his time to campsite, stopping often to enjoy the scenery, but mostly because he packed more for camping than he did for hiking on the trails. Once on the site, he set up his tent, arranged his things, and he headed out to the beach to pick up sticks and maybe some driftwood to build a fire with. The third time back from the beach, though, he heard in the woods a loud squeal. Now, it wasn't really close, it was off in the distance, but it startled him. So he paused for a moment and he scanned the woods to try to see if he could see where the noise came from. After a short time, he didn't see anything, and even though it was unsettling, he shook it off and returned to his site to build his fire. The backpacker sites are C, D, and E, and they're clustered together. but no, in no way are they close together. They're at least 100 to 200 yards apart. You can't see one site from the other. But they are, even though there's no trail between them that's official, they are separated by obvious footpath that has been worn into the forest floor where people have been walking between the sites. Alex crouched down around his fire ring and he started arranging the wood that he had collected to build his fire when something caught his attention out of the corner of his eyes. When he turned, he could see in the distance a figure running towards his site. It was all dressed in gray, maybe sweatpants and a hoodie, and he had the sense that maybe something was wrong and perhaps they needed help. But right as he was thinking that, he heard that squeal again, this time a little louder and a little closer. So he swung around and he started scanning the forest to see if he could see where this noise was coming from. But he couldn't see anything. And as he was scanning, he realized that runner must be getting close by now, so he turned back to see where the individual was, and they had vanished. Now, he reasoned their way in his mind that perhaps they were campers from the other two campsites, C or D, and perhaps they were heading to the pit toilet, which was up towards the trail about 200 yards away from this campsite. Didn't make a lot of sense, though, and he didn't want to think about it too much, so he just returned to building his fire. Alex made himself a quick meal, popped a couple of drinks, and then decided he wanted to take a walk. He hadn't seen the other two sites, C or D, yet, so that's the direction he headed. When he got to Site D, it was empty. There wasn't a tent, or obviously nobody was staying there, so he continued on to Site C. Site C had a tent pitched, and you could see a couple sitting at the picnic table having drinks. He thought he'd run over and introduce himself and say hi as their camping neighbor from Site E. He noticed the couple were very nice, a little drunk though, but in a very nice, calm sort of drunk way. And he didn't want to bring up the screeching noise or the runner because he thought it just sounded weird. So he said goodbye and headed back to his site. When Alex got back to his site, he opened another adult beverage, lit up a cigar, and laid back on the ground to observe the heavens. It was a beautiful night that night, very clear, and he could see all the stars passing by. After he was done with his beverage, he decided to hit the sack. Around 2:30 a.m., he was jolted awake by a loud crack of thunder. The storm had rolled in early, and the wind was picking up, and it was getting colder as the temperature dropped. It was really raining hard. He enjoyed the rain, but this was different. It was a full-blown lightning storm. He felt extremely vulnerable sitting there in his tent, exposed to the elements. The storm raged on for about an hour or so before it tapered off and ended up being a steady drizzle of rain. Just as Alex was drifting off to sleep again, though, he heard that squeal. It came back from in the woods. He sat up, his eyes wide open, and then he heard a second squeal. Alex knew Rock Island didn't have any dangerous animals. They didn't have bears or wolves or anything, maybe some deer and porcupine. But still, this noise unnerved him. He was like, well, what could this be? And he felt it was like a pig squeal. That's how he could describe it. He wasn't a farmer or anything. He didn't fully know what a pig sounded like, but it sounded wounded or maybe angry. Right at this moment is when he heard the footsteps. They were just outside his tent. Kind of muffled, though, with the ground being soaked from the rain, but definitely he knew it was either a large animal or possibly a human being. And it was moving around his tent. Alex slowly reached over to his sack and grabbed a knife, and he brought it close to his chest. He just sat there quiet, sitting up waiting. He repeated to himself, it's just an animal. It's fine. It's just an animal. There's nothing in these woods that can hurt you. The footsteps eventually faded away, and after 10 minutes of silence, Alex tried to relax again. He set the knife down, but just as he was about to lay back down, A squeal blasted outside the tent. His body froze. His heart started pounding. He could feel the blood rushing to his ears. It was intense. He was on edge. It was so loud. Forcing himself to speak, he growled, "Get out of here!" It wasn't a shout, more of a controlled snarl, meant to project bravery less than cowardice. The squealing stopped. So did the footsteps. But sleep was out of the question. He sat awake for the next hour, clutching his knife again, till the rain finally ceased. Alex felt a little safer to go outside. He needed to relieve himself. But as he unzipped his tent and he peeked out, he saw his picnic table had been flipped over, totally upside down. He was oddly calm, but he thought, "This is enough. I'm leaving this island today." But he looked around his campsite and he looked at his other items and nothing else was disturbed. So he reasoned, maybe it was the wind that had flipped the table and during the storm. He knew this was odd and the table's so heavy he didn't think it was possible, but this is how he reasoned with himself to explain what had just happened. After that, he made a little coffee, had a bite to eat, and he was gradually feeling better. The sun was out and the day was warming up, and he decided to take a hike. That was the reason he came to Rock Island in the first place, was to hike the Thornton Loop Trail. He determined not to let the fear beat him out and let it win, so he packed up his backpack and off he went on his hike. His first stop was at the brick water tower, and this was quite the construction, and it was amazing to look at. He didn't quite understand why it had to be so tall, but there was a fireplace inside, and it looked like it had a recent fire. After that, he continued on to where the two sisters, probably the villagers, were buried along with other family members. And on Rock Island, there's 3 known cemeteries. There's the one with the villagers, the two sisters. There's the one where Chester Thornton is buried. And there's one near the lighthouse where lighthouse keeper David E. Corbin lies. There's also at least one more. It's a Potawatomi burial ground, but nobody really understands or knows where the location of that cemetery is. A short distance from the cemetery, there's a scenic outlook with a bench, and Alex decided to sit down and take a break and enjoy the view. That's when he heard off in the distance some other hikers, and they were speaking loudly, gutturally though. He couldn't understand the language, and he couldn't even place what language it was. He just knew it wasn't English. And he was sitting there listening, and that's when he heard, out in the woods, the ooh, ooh, ooh. And immediately these other hikers went, ooh, 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 ooh. And he laughed to himself because it was like they were mocking the noise that they were hearing into the woods as well. He got up from his bench and he started heading up the trail towards where these voices were coming from, but he never ran into these other hikers. Never seen a sign of them. And there's no side trails for them to take. So he thought that was kind of odd. The rest of the hike went well. After he visited Corbin's grave, he took the self-guided tour of the Potawatomi Lighthouse, and then he passed through the bizarre wooden gate that marked something grand and strolled down to that facility where the boathouse is. After he returned back to his site, he decided to walk down to Camp C and speak to the couple that were camping there to see if they heard the squealing noises that night. Unfortunately, their tent was packed up and it looked like they had already departed. He headed back to his site, and much as he did the previous night, he cooked up a little food, cracked open an adult beverage, lit a cigar, and was enjoying the night. Tonight, he decided to turn in much earlier because, well, he didn't get any sleep the previous night and he was tired. As he was sleeping, though, he sat up in his bed with a jolt. He doesn't know what woke him up, but a wave of dread fell over him. He couldn't understand it. It was like something was in the tent with him. something angry, seething, vengeful even. Couldn't explain it, but it caused fear, and he froze. And then a wave of smell came over him of garbage, more like rotting meat. And it was so pungent and so strong, it made him want to puke. But he couldn't. He was just sitting there, frozen, as all this was happening. But he came to the realization, in an odd way, that, hey, he accepted whatever was going to happen to him. If it was death, at least this would be over. And that's how traumatic it felt. And then he passed out. Or at least he thinks he passed out. Because the next thing he remembers was waking up about 8 in the morning, laying on top of the sleeping bag. His body was contorted in a very unnatural position. His leg was sticking straight out. His other right leg was twisted and his foot touching his knee, sort of like he was posed. Panic surged through him. He told himself again and again, this was a dream. It must have been a dream. I'm leaving this island today. It must have been a dream. And as fast as he could, he packed up his backpack and he hit the trail headed for the dock. The first ferry wouldn't arrive till 10:30 in the morning. So as he passed time by going to the Great Hall and reading about Thornton. After that, he decided to head to the east of the dock where there's a little bench and he could sit, have a cigar, and he just zoned out gazing over Lake Michigan. And that's when it happens. From behind, he hears a hey! And he jumped. And the fella behind him just started laughing. He was like, whoa, sorry, dude. I just came over. I see you smoking your cigar, and I was wondering if you had a light. After this, Alex was a little embarrassed. He was like, it's okay, guy. I didn't get much sleep last night. He gave the guy his lighter, and they started to chat. This feller, turns out he was from Madison, Wisconsin, and he was looking into buying property on Washington Island. Seemed like a very outdoorsy fellow that liked camping. And he asked Alex, what site are you camping at? And Alex mentioned that he was staying at Site E. And he casually said, hey, I usually book that site every year. You must have got to the reservation before me because I had to book Site D. Alex was a little confused by this because he had walked by Site D several times, and there was no tent or evidence of anybody camping in that site. He asked the fellow about this, and the gentleman said, well, he books the site, but he usually camps out in the woods. Sometimes the cemetery or up by the Potawatomi Lighthouse. But this year he was trying to find an old log house that had been tumbled down. He was going to try to camp in there. This made Alex feel a little uneasy. He started changing his opinion of this guy. And that's when the fella said, did you hear the screeches? When Alex admitted he had, the man paused. His expression went blank. And he looked at Alex and he said, you know, a demon lives on the island. Under normal circumstances, Alex would have found this funny and just laughed it off. But after the last 2 nights, he did not feel in the mood. He noticed the man was studying him for a bit before saying, did you see anything last night? Alex shook his head. Then the man nodded and confessed he'd seen something in the cemetery. But he wouldn't say. He just warned Alex, if that screeching bothers you, you might not want to go to the cemetery. Then without prompting, the man leaned in and he said 4 cryptic words. Keepers of the flame. At this point, it was getting too creepy for Alex. He ashed out his cigar and he told the fella he's going to go wait at the dock for the ferry. As he turned to leave, the fella goes, hey! And Alex turned around and he goes, "Don't come back here." Alex turned back around and just started walking for the dock. He didn't know if it was a warning or a threat. He didn't care. He just wanted to get off that island. After Alex returned home, he was very curious, so he started looking up keepers of the flame as it pertained to Rock Island. He discovered the Potawatomi, that could be translated loosely as keepers of the flame. Sometimes lighthouse keepers are referred to as keepers of the flame. But what disturbed him was he found there's also a 19th century cult that is rumored to visit the island from time to time, and they refer to themselves as keepers of the flame. Now, Alex knows most campers go to Rock Island to enjoy the nature, the beautiful buildings, and camping under the stars. And he understands that. But he also says, don't go to Rock Island. So what do you think of that story? Was our camper just a nervous Nelly, or was there something that was bugging him out there and visiting him? I mean, you have to admit, things are kind of strange. You got that squealing in the woods. You got that oohing. The strangers from some strange land speaking a strange language in a guttural voice, being scared half out his wits in his tent. And then you got that feller down at the dock. He was certainly acting strange. But, that's not the best part, though. 2025, Saltless Shakedowns is visiting Rock Island. And we're going to be there for a couple days. So if you're camping this season and you want a visitor to tell some tall tales around your campfire, invite me down. We can grab a cigar, a couple of drinks, and tell our stories. Now, I don't want you to go through the misery that feller went through, though. So I'll teach you a little trick. And it's a trick learned, and that's how to relax in your campsite when you're all alone. And I'll tell you the secret right now. Let me remove my hat, and let me get really close to the camera. Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. Did that help you relax? It always worked for me. And remember, if you're camping in 2025, let's get together. Don't come looking for me, though.
'Cause I'm coming looking for you!
Exploring islands near and far, Rock Isle under a northern star, Beaver Isle where echoes wake, Lesser no shadowed and lustrous lake. Hoist the flag, let's brave the squall, salty tales will hear